Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Syracuse Football Postgame presented by Krause Health. My name is Brent Axe, and we are here after that's not how that was supposed to go, a Cardinal crush in Louisville as Syracuse gets blown out by the Louisville Cardinals. Final score 41-3 in Louisville. So Syracuse stumbles to its worst loss of the season. They fall to 5-5. And now a big question mark about this team as it goes down the stretch about whether it can become bowl eligible or not after getting thoroughly dominated by Louisville out of a bye week, by the way. It was Louisville who looked like the team that had 2 weeks to prepare and had 2 weeks of rest. But Louisville just shot out of a cannon right from the start, and Syracuse never recovered. Syracuse doesn't have the offense that's built to recover from a game like this with its kind of ground and pound grinding style of play. So once you get down, 21-3, it's hard for a Syracuse football team that can't throw the football to get out of that. Syracuse typically likes to control games, defense stepping up, but that was far from the case today. Malik Cunningham didn't really have impressive numbers, but was surgical in his precision and surgical in the way that he handled this Syracuse defense, which clearly had its worst performance of the season, not only by allowing Malik Cunningham to throw for 4 touchdowns, run for another. Mikel Jones, now we can haggle about the targeting call. By letter of the rule, it was targeting. You cannot lead with the helmet. He didn't hit the head or neck area, but by letter of the rule, it is targeting. So there's Syracuse's heart and soul of its defense out of the game. It didn't matter. That Syracuse defense got run over, literally and figuratively, and was watching the ball sail over its head, notably safety Eric Coley throughout the game. And this was Syracuse's best chance on paper anyway to get a bowl bid in its back pocket, because what Syracuse will do in the next 2 weeks is it will face NC State and it will face Pittsburgh. Currently, NC State and Pittsburgh are 7-2 football teams, and they are both top 25 football teams, and they are both considerably better defenses than Louisville. That was the stunning thing about this game today, is the Louisville defense looked like the 85 Bears. For them to just completely shut down the Syracuse offense, not that the Syracuse offense is one that was creative or innovative coming out of its bye week. It was flat, and Louisville knew what was coming and stopped it. And again, once you're in a hole, you become even more predictable because you got to throw the football, and Syracuse can't even, innovate even if it wanted to. But for the Louisville defense to look that good, I expected Malik Cunningham to make some plays. I expected Syracuse to try and weather that storm as best as it could. But man, for the Louisville defense to just drop the hammer like that was very, very surprising. And again, that's the trick now. You go to NC State next week. That's a much better defense than Louisville on paper. And, the ACC's been weird this year, and weird things come out of nowhere. And Syracuse just doesn't match up well with Pittsburgh at all. At all. I mean, Pittsburgh is a team that Syracuse cannot keep pace with offensively. If they can't get any pass rush on Kenny Pickett, he's going to pick you apart all day. That Pittsburgh defense is designed to stop the run. Sean Tucker held to 95 yards today, and he got a lot of garbage yards in this game in the fourth quarter. And by the way, what are Garrett Schrader and Sean Tucker doing on the field late in the game? You're down 41-3, just trying to get the heck out of there without any significant injuries. And not that Louisville is going to come at you, with the gas pedal still on the floor, but why even risk it? Why even risk putting those two out on the field when you're going to obviously need them and any key players healthy to try and get that bowl eligibility either next week or against Pittsburgh at the Dome on the 27th? So that was questionable right there. I appreciate everybody watching in the comments here live. Just a reminder that we do put this up on YouTube, on Syracuse Orange Sports, and in my recap and on our social media channels, just in case you miss us here live on Facebook and on the Syracuse Orange Sports YouTube page. So let me bring in a couple of your comments as we go here, and then we'll give you some, not that the numbers are worth looking at in some ways. I mean, Syracuse got its fanny kicked today, and that's pretty much all you need to know, but we'll look at some numbers on this one. Cody noting that the bye week killed Syracuse, and he would like to see a change made at head coach there. Blake says, terrible performance after a bye week, terrible preparation. Chris also looking for a change here. How do you sell this team to the fans next year, a question that John Wildhack is certainly going to have to answer if Syracuse doesn't make a bowl game. Look, they've got 2 games to go. This was a terrible performance. It's not encouraging that they can go to either NC State or beat Pitt at home in the next 2 weeks after today, but there's 2 more games to go, and the ACC is weird. So to write that definitively now, I think would be premature, but it's certainly in the conversation. And if they do finish 5-7 and are short of a bowl game, Dino and his status is going to be a big question for John Wildhack to answer at this point. So I think that's those are fair points there. Blake points this out. Maybe the kiss of death came this morning. I'm shocked at how bad Syracuse played today. The Bear on College Game Day picked Syracuse today on his board. Yeah, the Bear has actually been a bit of a kiss of death this year, Blake. He's 19 of 31 on his picks coming into today. So, that wasn't exactly an encouraging note there for Syracuse fans when Bear picked it. I like that Bear picked Syracuse. Big fan of the Bear, but his picks have not been going well this year so far. Jim agrees with me. Tucker should not have even been in for the last 2 possessions of the game. This was just the second time this season, by the way, that Tucker did not top 100 yards, so he did not set the single-season rushing mark. He surely will at some point in the next 2 games. He needed 106 yards today to top Joe Morris for the single-season rushing mark. He finished with 95, so he's right there. He'll certainly do it next week at NC State. Garrett Schrader also chasing down the single-season rushing mark for a quarterback, but he was nowhere near that today. And that's what you got to take a look at first here, the play of the offense and particularly Garrett Schrader. So Schrader threw for 50 yards against Boston College 2 weeks ago, but because Tucker had such a big day running the ball with 207 yards against the Eagles, Syracuse didn't really need a passing game that day. But eventually you were going to run into somebody that stopped your running game. And that's what happened today. And you need a quarterback that can throw the football, mix it up, and get Syracuse not back in a game they're trailing 38-3, 35-3, just 14-3. Louisville got up bing bang 14-3. If you got a quarterback that can throw the ball, and even at that point, Syracuse didn't have to abandon its running philosophy. If anything, try and keep it on the field to keep the clock moving and keep Louisville off the field. But man, you got to throw the football at some point. And this is when it finally came back to bite Syracuse. Schrader finishes 10 of 18 for 46 yards. Sean Tucker, 95 yards on the day. Schrader, who normally gives Syracuse a big punch offensively, averaged just 2.2 yards per carry. He had 20 carries for 43 yards on the day. Syracuse's leading receiver was Devon Cooper with 4 catches for 19 yards. That's obviously not going to get it done. Malik Cunningham didn't have huge numbers. Lamar Jackson watching today, it was Lamar Day. They retired his jersey. Just the second Louisville player to have his number retired at Louisville. The other guy, he was a quarterback back in the day. Oh, boy. May have heard this name before. Johnny Unitas. Anybody heard that name before? Yeah, those are the 2 players that have had their numbers retired, not their jerseys honored, had their numbers retired by Louisville. And Malik Cunningham today, 13 of 18, 209 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air. He finished with just 19 yards rushing. But that's all he needed because he was surgical. And those touchdown passes, bing, bang, boom. And as I mentioned, many that went right at Eric Coley. Eric Coley had a rough day at safety for Syracuse today. So as we look here at some other numbers, Mitchell shot out of a cannon to start this game. Jalen Mitchell, 102 yards, 39-yard carry, first offensive play for Louisville, and they were off and running literally. And all Louisville was doing was running around the tackles, great blocking by their wide receivers, and that was it. And then Cunningham was able to go to the air, and this defense just, frankly, pathetic. There's just no other way to put it. It was an embarrassing, pathetic showing by a defense that doesn't really play that way typically, but certainly played that way today. So all told, Louisville had 382 yards, and really the only reason that wasn't any worse was because they laid off in the second half. Malik Cunningham was hanging out with Lamar Jackson on the sideline in the fourth quarter, and they called off the dogs. If they put the pedal down, that could have been much worse in that case. So Syracuse was 3 of 14 on third down today. Louisville 5 and 11. The Orange couldn't convert either one of their fourth downs in this play. All told, Louisville averaged 7 yards a play Syracuse averaged 3.2 yards a play. And that's all you really need to know. Louisville 5 of 5 in the red zone today. Like, this was just a situation where if you could manage Malik Cunningham's plays between the 20s, but keep him out of the red zone, that'd be great. But obviously with Cunningham connecting on, he had a 41-yard touchdown pass, I believe a 38-yard touchdown pass. He was connecting outside of the red zone, but putting the ball where it needed to be there. So there's just no other way to put it. A pretty embarrassing performance by the Orange today. Kevin says very poor offensive play calling today. Jack says one pass to the tight end and he drops it. Yeah, I'll tell you what, Luke Benson, you're not making my life any easier. I've been campaigning for Syracuse to throw the ball to the tight end more. He gets the ball thrown to him and he flat out drops it, right? And that's what Syracuse needs. They need a short play action passing game to get the offense moving. Courtney Jackson is a great receiver, yards after the catch. Devon Cooper is becoming a terrific possession receiver. Alford is a threat, but nothing from that today. And, that's a credit to the Louisville defense for dropping the hammer and making Syracuse so predictable that they couldn't do anything. But Schrader was just running for his life. And for a quarterback in 2 straight games to have not topped 100 yards passing, that's not going to do it. As good as Syracuse can run the football, when they run the football, they're as good as anybody. Obviously, Schrader and Tucker with, coming into today, Schrader and Tucker combined running the football would rank 21st in the country. Only 20 teams better than those two combined running the football. So, hey, you dance with the girl you brought to the prom, right? If you're third in the country running the football, you run the football. But you got to be able to mix it up a little bit, throw the ball at times to throw off the defense. So when you get down 21-3, 28-3, you're cooked because you can't run your way out of that. Louisville just played it perfectly today. And that's what really stands out to me about this game. And a few of you have made this comment, and I just really can't understand it. How does Louisville look like the team that had the bye? Syracuse needed that bye week. You play 9 straight football games, the owies piling up, legit injuries for Syracuse, and Carlos Vettorello wasn't out there today. Trevor Pena wasn't out there today. Chris Bleich wasn't out there today. But these are not injuries that are game changers. These are not injuries that, should affect the Syracuse to the point that they lose 41-3. The trouble with the bye week, and man, I talked about this throughout the week on the radio, on Twitter, here on Orange Weekly earlier this week. It was a big point of emphasis for me that my fear was Syracuse would be rusty out of the bye week. And you can't let Malik Cunningham go bing, bing, get a couple of big plays early and have to crawl out of that hole. It's exactly what happened. It's exactly what happened. This team just flat out looked rusty, not ready to play. There's something about going to Louisville, and Nate made this point, my colleague from syracuse.com. Syracuse has to petition the ACC the years they go to Louisville to play that game earlier in the season. I don't know what it is, but when this team goes to Louisville, they not only lose, they lose big. I saw Nate cite the stat here. Let me see if I can pull it up for you real quick while we're talking about it here. Yeah, here it is right here. In the last 4 trips to Louisville, Syracuse has lost by an average. This was before today, by the way, so you got to factor in today's 38-point loss. But coming into today, Syracuse had lost by an average of 30.5 points at Louisville. All 4 of those games played in the month of November. So Wildhack has got to petition the league in the offseason when they go back there in 2023. And Syracuse, this was their 3rd straight trip to Louisville, one of those quirky schedule things that happened because of the different schedule they put up last year because of COVID and everything. But man, when this team goes to Louisville, they don't lose. They get shellacked. No wonder they picked this to be Lamar Jackson Day, right? And retire his number and get that going. There's a lot of emotion there. The fans were loving it. They were booing Dino because he was calling timeouts right before the first half because they were waiting for Lamar. That was the highlight of the day. So you had a Louisville basketball team that loses to Furman last night, 80-72. The fans were a little edgy, probably not expecting the football team to make up for it in this way. Certainly not surprised that Louisville won the game. Pardon me. But in this manner, to blow out Syracuse out of a bye week, that's a little bit surprising. And as Jim points out here, you think Cunningham was surgical. Wait until you see Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett has become one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Mel Kiper Jr., I believe at this point, has him as the number one quarterback prospect going into next year's draft. And, I mean, he's legit. Pitt's legit. I didn't even mean to rhyme there. You can't go into that final game of the year having to beat Pittsburgh to get a bowl win. So NC State becomes all of the terms, all of them, must win, however you want to label it. Dino's job could be on the line for that, certainly in the minds of some fans here in the comments and on Twitter and other places. His job's on the line. I don't really believe it's on the line in the eyes of John Wildhack. I think even if they finish 5-7, Wildhack's going to, I think he's got everything he needs from his standpoint. I'm not saying I agree with this, but I think he's got everything from his standpoint to say, hey, look, we made progress. Yeah, some tough losses down the year, but the switch to Schrader, the offense led by Tucker, if the defense has two performances down the stretch as bad as this one, it's going to be hard to defend them. But in order to make that change, you got to buy out the next 3 years of Dino's contract and then hire a new staff on top of that, which in theory would have to be a bigger, bolder hire than Dino. And I don't see Syracuse doing that for a second. I'd be stunned if that were the case, frankly, given the financial ramifications of it. We'll leave the window open. You never know with these things, but I would be very surprised if that was the case. I'm not saying you can't have that opinion. I'm not saying I agree with that, but just kind of analyzing the situation from my standpoint, I really don't think they're going to make that change. But there are 2 games to go. NC State is going to be a tough game. I'll look this up while we're talking about it here, guys, while we're live. NC State plays Wake today, and that is a ACC game between 2 ranked teams. And I believe that game starts right about now, if I'm not mistaken. You guys can tell me in the comments here while we're talking about it here. So I don't know if we'll get to kind of comment on how this game could look next week. No, that's a 7:30 game. Okay, so we'll have to watch tonight to see how NC State plays against Wake Forest. ACC game between 2 ranked teams, 2 of the better teams in the league. You know, Wake's trying to win the league. NC State's still trying to maybe prove they could be in the ACC championship game. So watch that game tonight. It's on the ACC network in context of what happened today and see if you feel like this is a team that Syracuse can be on the same field with next week. Because what we were talking about with Pittsburgh, I don't think that's a team Syracuse can be on the same field with, frankly, and hope to win that game. There would have to be so much that would go right in that game, including a lot of turnovers and somehow shutting down Kenny Pickett and a number of things to even consider Syracuse being competitive in that game. Pitt has owned Syracuse in recent years. NC State's their best shot. You know, like it or not, it's a better team and a better defense than they face today. That's their best shot, which goes back to why this is a whole season and a whole thing. Think of the close losses that Syracuse had earlier this year. Games they should have won. Now, they got held back by a terrible holding call against Florida State, but there's a game you should have had. You had the best team in the ACC, according to a lot of people, on the ropes. Bad play calling in that game. Going to overtime, you lose to Wake Forest by 3, right? Look at those close losses this team has had. Look at any one of those. You win 1 or 2 more, you're bowl eligible right now. That's why I got to close in those things, right? So it all comes back to bite you a little bit today, but, you know, one more opportunity next week, right? Allison says, unacceptable performances today. I think it's easy to blame Schrader, but isn't he just running the plays that Gilbert calls? That is a heck of a point right there. The play calling before the game got out of hand, Allison, was stale. It was unimaginative, and they took the ball out of Tucker's hands. They panicked. They're down 14-3, and all of a sudden, Sterling Gilbert, and remember, Dino Babers is essentially the offensive coordinator too. They kind of share responsibilities for the play calling, so I think you got to put Babers in there too, because he essentially is the offensive coordinator. But they panicked a little too early, started throwing the ball, got away from what they do, and even when you throw the football, that's where I'll put it on Schrader. Allison, he missed some open receivers. There was a 4th-and-1 play. How about Syracuse punting the ball, by the way? 4th-and-1 down 28-3, and you punt the ball. I mean, not that the offense was doing anything to give you faith that they could convert there, but you want to talk about waving the white flag in that moment. I mean, come on. But even when the game was in reach, yeah, play calling certainly not the best. We brought up the targeting earlier. Look, there's got to be a compromise here, okay? There's got to be a compromise here in that why does a player have to be thrown out of the game for targeting? Mikel Jones led with his helmet. Can't do that. But he didn't hit the head or the neck area. So if there's, I don't know, a 15-yard penalty on sportsmanlike conduct, whatever the case may be, but to just throw a player out of the game for that is unacceptable. And it's something that I think the ACC, college football, whatever powers that be, I've got to point to here, has to take a look at. To take a player like Mikel Jones out of the game like that when, yeah, he made a mistake, okay? But why that's an automatic ejection to me is a little ridiculous. Now, if you clear shot to the head, clear shot to the neck, I don't know if you'd like almost like a strike zone in baseball, you draw parameters on the body, give the ref a little discretion there, I guess, to throw somebody out of the game. But that was targeting, but not worthy of kicking a player, any player, let alone your defensive leader and a smart player. Mikel Jones is one of the smartest defensive players I've seen. He's the leader on defense. So that bothered me. Little context out of a big loss. Syracuse's defense was struggling regardless, but why are they just throwing these guys out of the game for that? So hopefully they'll take a look at that. Targeting calls have been awful around college football. Michael makes that point here. Saw a ridiculous targeting call in the Auburn game as well. You see it every weekend, and hopefully they'll take a look at that. As Allison says, now it was targeting. By letter of the rule, it is targeting. I don't agree that should be targeting, but to just go automatic ejection on that is a little ridiculous on that. Rob notes a trailing 7-3 first quarter, Louisville facing a 3rd and long. Guy wide open, gets a first down. Cunningham touchdown pass a play or two later. All downhill from there. Yeah, it was all downhill from the first play when Mitchell ran 39 yards. Then he ran about 19 yards and put Louisville inside the 20. It kind of reminded me of Syracuse struggled early against Virginia Tech. The answer was Virginia Tech certainly had a worse defense that Syracuse could answer on the offensive side of the ball. But Virginia Tech saw something early and put Syracuse on its heels. In this game, Louisville did the same, and Syracuse never recovered from it. Like they got an uppercut in the eye, first play of the game and never recovered. It reminded me of, when Drago beat Apollo Creed. Like that wasn't a fight from the beginning. You almost wanted somebody to throw the darn towel, as they said in that movie, right? Which they never ended up doing. And now I got to watch Rocky IV again because that's an amazing movie. And I got to get my mind off of this bad game today. So I'll pop Rocky IV in there tonight. They just came out with an extended director's cut about that movie. So we'll have a Rocky IV discussion another time. But that's what it reminded me of. Syracuse took a big uppercut early and it was over. And you never want to say a game's over that early. And, fans are very emotional on Twitter and they're down 14-3. I got a lot of people tweeting at me saying, oh, it's over. It's done. Goodbye. And I'm like, come on, guys. But this time I was like, you might be right because Syracuse doesn't have the type of offense to get out of that kind of hole. And they didn't look like a team that was hungry for its 6th win. They didn't look like a team that was, looking to celebrate that bowl eligibility, getting that 13th game of the year. So that's the good news, folks, is there are 2 more games left. They have a chance to recover from this. They have a chance to, get up off the mat after an embarrassing game and show some pride on the road next week and clinch a bowl bid. And if they lose that, Pittsburgh is going to be as tough as it gets. But maybe if Pitt's got some things in the bag, they play Virginia next week. And if they've got the Coastal wrapped up, maybe they lay off and don't play that game the way maybe they would if they still needed it to clinch some things. I mean, I'm just trying to, think out loud. Here are some scenarios that could go Syracuse's way. But all told, on paper, this was their best shot. And they blew it. And they blew it big time. So where they go from here is certainly going to be interesting. And as some of you have pointed out here in the comments, it's basketball season, right? Syracuse plays Drexel tomorrow. The battle for Atlantis follows. Like, this is already a pretty intense an interesting basketball season given the quality of opponents. Drexel's an NCAA tournament team. That could be a closer game than people think tomorrow. So football's job was to hold our attention. And the fact that they're one game away from clinching a bowl game, you would think that would be easy to do. And we'll still be paying attention, of course, and watching. But, man, this team had momentum. They were fun to watch. There were so much positive talking points about this team going into the bye, and it's like they just disappeared somehow in the bye week, and they got to find themselves again really quick if they're going to stay in the conversation here. Because if this team finishes 5-7, you're going to have a divided fan base. You're going to have one side of the fan base that feels like enough is enough. That would be 5 seasons in 6 for Dino Babers without a bowl game, and enough of this close but no cigar stuff. And then you'd have others that would say, no, they recovered well, and I like what they're doing. And I think it would be weighted heavily more towards the first point rather than the second. But you don't want to split 6-6, just even if they're there, or if they won 7 games, whatever the case may be. Bowl bid, all bets are off. Dino gets another year. Everybody, if you're not happy with it, you can at least understand it, right? Like, okay, you got a bowl game. I can go forward with that. You finish 5-7, it's going to create a lot of split camps, if you will. We're already too divided in this country right now politically, and I won't get into that. But we'll see what happens. They got an opportunity to make up for it next week at NC State. That's when we'll join you next here on Syracuse Football Postgame after the Orange take on NC State. We do not know a game time for that as we speak here. They're going to decide the SU-NC State game time after the games finish out. So NC State plays Wake Forest tonight. I would imagine we're not going to get a game time for Syracuse-NC State until after that game's over. So late tonight, early tomorrow, we'll get a game time for SU-NC State next week. So whenever it's on, we will be joining you here on Syracuse Football Postgame presented by Krause Health right after that game. And, we'll see what we're talking about then. Another loss and a must-win situation against Pitt, or maybe the Orange put one in their back pocket and prove us all wrong here after what was a pretty embarrassing day. There's no other way to put it for Syracuse, losing to Louisville 41-3. So you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Always appreciate you joining me here on Syracuse Football Postgame live on Facebook and on YouTube. But don't forget the YouTube clip. We put it up on our social media channels. I embedded it in my recap on syracuse.com. You can find the replay on Facebook. The Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page. Easy to find if you can't be here live, and always appreciate it when you guys share it with your friends as well on social media, and tell your friends that we're here after every Syracuse football game. And we'll be getting it going for basketball as well. Same deal, but over on the Syracuse Orange basketball Facebook page, same YouTube channel we're on now. And again, the clip available afterwards as well. So thanks for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll chat with you next week after the Orange take on NC State.